What if the reason your life keeps stalling isn't laziness, bad luck, or lack of talent, but a silent flaw in how you operate every single day? A flaw so common that almost no one questions it until it's too late. Welcome back to American Wall Street. If this kind of thinking challenges you, inspires you, or makes you uncomfortable in a good way, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep creating deeper, more honest content like this. Most people believe their biggest problem is motivation. They wake up hoping to feel inspired, waiting for the right mood, the right energy, the right moment. And when that feeling doesn't show up, they assume something is wrong with them. They scroll, they delay, they drift, and they repeat the same cycle the next day. But motivation was never the real issue. Motivation is emotional, and emotions are unstable. They rise when life feels good and disappear the moment pressure, boredom, or fear shows up. If your progress depends on motivation, your progress will always be fragile. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't fail because they lack desire. They fail because they lack a system that works on their worst days. A system doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't wait for confidence. It doesn't negotiate with excuses. A system quietly moves you forward even when you are tired, distracted, or unsure. That is why two people with the same intelligence and opportunity end up in completely different places. One relies on feelings, the other relies on structure. Look closely at your own life. How many times have you started strong, full of intention, only to slowly fade back into old patterns? Not because you didn't want change badly enough, but because once the initial emotional high disappeared, nothing was left to carry you forward. That's the danger of chasing motivation. It teaches you to associate action with emotion. And life does not reward people who wait to feel ready. Life rewards people who move consistently, especially when they don't feel like it. High performers understand something most people never stop to question. You don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your systems. This is why real change feels boring at first. There are no dramatic breakthroughs, no instant transformations. Just small, repeatable actions that don't look impressive but compound over time. Quiet systems beat loud motivation every single time. If you want a different life, the first shift is not emotional, it's operational. You stop asking, "How do I feel today?" and start asking, "What system runs today, regardless of how I feel?" That single shift changes everything. Because once your life is built on systems instead of emotions, bad days lose their power. Mood stops controlling behavior, and progress becomes inevitable rather than accidental. This is where the real journey begins. Before we continue, here's a question for you. Be honest and answer in the comments. Question: when things get hard, what usually determines your actions? A, your motivation and emotional state. B, a system you follow even when motivation is gone. Comment A or B below. Your answer says more about your future than you might realize. Most people lose their day before it even begins. Not because something went wrong, but because they never chose who they were going to be. The moment they wake up, the world rushes in. Notifications, messages, unfinished problems from yesterday, other people's priorities. Without realizing it, they hand over control of their inner state to whatever appears on a screen first. But there's a brief window every morning when the mind is unusually open. A quiet, fragile moment when your subconscious is listening more closely than it will all day. What you think, what you say, and what you focus on during this time doesn't just affect your mood, it shapes your identity. This is where real change is either planted or lost. Morning priming is not about hype, affirmations, or pretending life is perfect. It is about intention. It is about deciding, before the chaos begins, how you will show up, what kind of person you will be, and what standards you will operate by today. 10 minutes is enough. Not because 10 minutes is magical, but because repetition is. When you slow your breathing, you calm your nervous system. When your body settles, your mind becomes receptive. In that state, the words you speak to yourself matter more than you think. The brain does not distinguish sharply between what is imagined repeatedly and what is experienced. Over time, it begins to treat your internal dialogue as truth. That is why the language you use is critical. Saying, "I am becoming disciplined," keeps discipline in the future. Saying, "I am disciplined," brings it into the present. The goal is not to lie to yourself, but to speak from the identity you are choosing to build. You are not describing who you were yesterday. You are declaring who is in charge today. Equally important is visualizing behavior, not outcomes. Instead of imagining success, you see yourself executing. You picture yourself handling the difficult conversation, staying focused when distractions appear, finishing the task you usually avoid. This rehearsal reduces internal resistance because, on a neurological level, your brain has already been there. Most people live on default settings. They let emotions decide their tone, their reactions, their discipline. Morning priming interrupts that pattern. It installs a new baseline. It sets an emotional GPS, how you intend to feel, and a mental GPS, how you intend to act. This practice is quiet. No one applauds it. No one sees it. But it compounds quickly. Day after day, you stop asking, "What do I feel like doing?" and start moving as the person you have already defined yourself to be. Over time, your actions align. Then your confidence follows, not because you waited to feel confident, but because you have evidence. Identity is not formed in moments of intensity. It is formed in moments of consistency. And the morning is where consistency is easiest to protect. If you win the first 10 minutes of your day, you don't guarantee success, but you eliminate chaos, you remove randomness, you replace reaction with intention, and slowly, without force, you begin to live from the inside out rather than being pulled apart by the outside world. There is a moment in every person's life when growth quietly demands a choice. Not a dramatic decision, not a public declaration, but a private shift in how responsibility is handled. This moment often arrives disguised as frustration, disappointment, or the feeling of being stuck. And most people miss it because accepting it feels uncomfortable. Radical ownership begins where excuses end. For a long time, it feels safer to believe that circumstances are the problem, that the timing is wrong, that other people don't cooperate, that the past has already decided the limits of the future. These explanations protect the ego, but they also quietly remove power. The more you explain why something isn't your fault, the more you teach yourself that you are not in control. Ownership reverses that internal equation. To take full responsibility for your life does not mean blaming yourself for everything that happens. It means recognizing that no matter what happens, the next move belongs to you. It means understanding that while you cannot control every event, you always control your response, your standards, and your actions. That distinction changes everything. The shift is subtle but profound. When something goes wrong, the question is no longer, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What am I going to do about it?" That single question moves the mind from passivity to problem solving. It redirects energy away from complaint and toward execution. Most people never make this shift because ownership feels heavy at first. It strips away comforting narratives. It removes the option of waiting for rescue. But what it gives in return is far more valuable: authority. When you own the outcome, you gain the right to influence it. This is the mindset of a CEO. A CEO does not complain about market conditions, blame the team endlessly, or wait for perfect circumstances. A CEO assesses reality, accepts responsibility, and makes decisions with what is available. Living as the CEO of your own life means applying that same standard internally. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop outsourcing responsibility to chance. Radical ownership simplifies life. Instead of tracking who is at fault, you focus on what can be controlled. Instead of replaying the past, you decide the next step. Instead of reacting emotionally, you act strategically. Over time, this builds a quiet confidence, not because life becomes easy, but because you trust yourself to respond effectively. This mindset also changes how failure is experienced. Failure stops being a verdict on your worth and becomes feedback. Something didn't work. Adjust, improve, move again. Ownership turns setbacks into data rather than drama. Most importantly, radical ownership restores momentum. Victimhood freezes action because it waits for conditions to change. Ownership creates movement because it acts regardless of conditions. Even small decisions made consistently from this place begin to compound. The hardest part is the beginning. The moment you stop blaming and start owning, you may feel exposed. But that exposure is temporary. What replaces it is strength built on reality, not hope. When you live from ownership, you don't need permission. You don't need approval. You don't need perfect timing. You move because it is your responsibility to move. And once responsibility is fully accepted, power quietly returns. Most people believe their exhaustion comes from doing too much. In reality, it comes from not finishing enough. The mind was never designed to carry dozens of unresolved tasks at the same time. Every unfinished email, every postponed conversation, every small promise you make to yourself and don't keep creates a mental burden. Not a dramatic one, but a constant, low level drain. Over time, that drain becomes anxiety, distraction, and the feeling of being perpetually behind. This is where small actions become powerful. The rule is simple. If something takes less than 5 minutes, do it now. No discussion, no delay, no emotional negotiation. The power of this rule is not in productivity, it is in identity formation. Every time you complete a small task immediately, you close a mental loop. The brain releases the tension associated with remembering it, focus returns, energy lifts. But more importantly, you reinforce a message to yourself. I am someone who follows through. Most people think follow through is a personality trait. It isn't. It is a trained identity. An identity is shaped by repeated evidence. When you consistently finish small things, you begin to trust yourself again. That trust becomes the foundation for taking on larger responsibilities. There is also a psychological shift that happens here. Procrastination thrives on ambiguity. When tasks remain vague and unstarted, they feel heavier than they are. Action collapses that illusion. A task that seemed overwhelming in your head often shrinks the moment you begin. 5 minutes of action is usually enough to dissolve resistance. This does not mean interrupting deep, focused work to chase trivial tasks. Discipline is not impulsiveness. It is discernment. If you are fully engaged in something important, you protect that focus. But when the moment allows and a task is small and clear, you act immediately. That precision is what separates discipline from chaos. Over time, something subtle changes. Your environment becomes cleaner, your inbox lighter, your mind quieter. You are no longer constantly reminded of what you haven't done. Instead, you carry evidence of completion. That evidence strengthens self-respect. And self-respect is built in private through small choices that no one applauds. The deeper value of this habit is momentum. Big goals often intimidate because they demand sustained effort. Small actions bypass that fear. They create movement, and movement, once started, tends to continue. One completed task leads to another. Confidence builds not from thinking about change, but from experiencing progress. Many people search for motivation before acting. This habit reverses that order. Action comes first, motivation follows, energy follows, clarity follows. In a world obsessed with massive breakthroughs, it is easy to overlook the power of finishing what is right in front of you. But life is rarely transformed by dramatic moments. It is reshaped by daily decisions to handle small responsibilities with integrity. When you consistently complete the small things, you send a clear signal to yourself. I can be trusted. And once that belief takes root, larger changes no longer feel impossible. They feel inevitable. This is how small actions quietly build a stronger self. In the modern world, the most valuable thing you own is not time, talent, or money. It is attention. And yet, it is the one thing most people give away without resistance. Attention is not infinite. Every notification, every screen flicker, every background ping pulls your nervous system out of balance. Even when you think you are ignoring it, your brain is reacting. Stress hormones rise, focus fragments, presence fades. Over time, this constant stimulation creates a quiet exhaustion that rest alone cannot fix. This is why boundaries matter more than willpower. Willpower assumes you can fight temptation indefinitely. Boundaries remove temptation before the fight begins. When your phone is in another room, you don't need discipline to ignore it. When notifications are off, your nervous system can finally settle. When there are clear no-screen windows, your mind remembers what silence feels like. Protecting attention is not about rejecting technology. It is about deciding what deserves access to your inner world. Without boundaries, your focus becomes a public space, open to interruption at any moment. With boundaries, it becomes private again. And in that privacy, clarity returns. As noise decreases, something else becomes easier to hear, your internal dialogue. The way you speak to yourself shapes the way you experience reality. Language is not neutral. It directs attention, reinforces beliefs, and quietly defines identity. The words you repeat, especially the ones that begin with I am, act like instructions to the brain. When you say, I am anxious, you are not just describing a feeling. You are turning a temporary state into a permanent label. The brain responds by looking for evidence to support that identity. Behavior follows belief. The same is true for any negative self definition, but language can also be used deliberately. Saying, I have experienced anxiety, acknowledges reality without becoming trapped by it. Saying, I am learning to focus, shifts identity toward growth. This is not denial, it is precision. You are choosing words that describe direction, not limitation. The mind believes repetition, it does not question it. Over time, repeated language becomes assumed truth. That truth shapes choices, habits, and reactions. This is why speaking from a future identity matters. You are not pretending to be someone you are not. You are reinforcing who you are becoming. There is also a deeper layer to this practice: gratitude for what has not yet arrived. Fear and gratitude both activate the imagination. One tightens the body, the other opens it. If the brain can suffer over imagined outcomes, it can also build resilience and confidence through imagined success. The nervous system responds accordingly. When attention is protected and language is intentional, identity stabilizes. You are no longer constantly pulled outward. You are anchored. From that place, decisions feel clearer, reactions soften, behavior becomes aligned. This is how change completes its cycle. Systems create consistency. Consistency reshapes identity. Identity guides behavior, and behavior produces results. Nothing about this is loud. Nothing about it is dramatic. But over time, it transforms how you live. You become less reactive, more deliberate, and more grounded. Not because life becomes easier, but because your inner structure becomes stronger. When attention is guarded and language is chosen carefully, you stop being shaped by the world around you. You begin shaping yourself from the inside out. Real change is rarely loud. It doesn't arrive through sudden motivation or dramatic breakthroughs. It is built quietly, through systems that guide behavior when emotions fade, through ownership that replaces excuses, through small actions completed with integrity, through protected attention, and through language chosen with intention. Over time, these elements reshape identity. And once identity changes, life follows. Not overnight, but inevitably. The people who transform their lives are not more inspired than others. They are more structured, more deliberate, and more honest with themselves. The deeper lesson is this: you don't rise by chasing feelings. You rise by building systems that work without them. To apply this today, stop waiting to feel ready. Define who you are, protect your attention, finish small tasks, speak with precision, and act consistently. Let structure carry you when motivation cannot. If you want to go deeper into these ideas, systems for self-mastery, mindset, discipline, and long-term wealth thinking, join our community to access more practical insights and discussions. And if this content brought you value, subscribe to American Wall Street. Your support gives us the motivation to keep creating meaningful content that helps you build a stronger future.